Matthew chapter 27 has been life-changing for me. 26 and 27 are all connected, obviously, because it's the crucifixion event, taking you, of course, from the upper room scene through the trials and into the crucifixion itself. We're looking specifically at chapter 27, and there are all these events that are taking place in chapter 27 around the crucifixion event itself. There in the chapter, there is no details given of the crucifixion, as we have stated to you often. The only thing you see about the actual crucifixion itself is verse 35 of chapter 27, then they crucified him. That's the sum total of the details. The rest of them are all of these stories. And as you get into these stories, you begin to discover that these stories really are testimonies or witnesses. And Matthew does a really strange thing, but he's got a problem, you understand. He's trying to convince the Jews that Jesus Christ was and is the kingly Messiah, and yet he's got this cross square in his face. What is he going to do with this cross? If you're trying to convince a group of people that Jesus is conqueror, Jesus is king, Jesus is in control, Jesus is on top of everything, and then, well, he didn't make it in the cross. I mean, they did trap him, yeah. They did strip him, yeah. They did scourge him, yeah. Well, he didn't. This should disqualify him, but Matthew is twisting and changing the whole thing back to the truth of what it really is, and that is that the cross does not disqualify him, it qualifies him. This is not defeat, this is victory, you have to understand. And he calls on the enemies, not the friends, not the disciples, not the guys who would defend Jesus, not the mother of Jesus. He calls on the enemies of Jesus to testify in his behalf. So this chapter is filled with all of these events giving testimony from the enemies of Christ that the cross indeed is his victory. There are three basic concepts that begin to spill out of the chapter itself. One of them is the idea of righteousness, and we only barely touched on it. I think it was Tuesday night. But it's amazing the number of events in this chapter that bespeak the righteousness of Jesus. One of them we gave to you was, of course, Judas. He's throwing back the money, and he's saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. He is blameless. That's an interesting testimony. It's interesting that the governor's wife, Pilate's wife, comes to him and says, have nothing to do with this just man. Pilate turns to the crowd, washes his hands, and says, I am innocent of the blood of this just, righteous man. So the worst enemies of Jesus give testimony that he is righteous. Last night we dealt with the concept of the idea of royalty. Not only righteousness, but royalty. And we looked at this scene with Pilate in verse 11 and discovered that the whole issue is the royalty of Christ. And Pilate bought into the fact that Jesus is a king. And you see that again and again and again. The mockery of the soldiers. It's really interesting in verse 27 down through verse 31. You have the mockery of the soldiers. It's the praetorium. It's their barracks. There's 600 to 1,000 of them. They've got one man to guard. They're surrounding him. It's fun time. And what is the whole mockery centered on? Kingship. They take a scarlet robe, a discarded scarlet robe, put it on his shoulders, as you would a king. They put together a crown of thorns, jam it on his brow. He's a king. They put a scepter in his hand, reed, weed, scepter. Make him king of the reed weeds. They anoint him with their spit. The whole scene is about his kingship. But that shouldn't surprise you, ladies and gentlemen, because he's going to die just like he was born. A king has just entered into the world in a manger because he was rejected. There was no room anyplace else. Born in a stable, cows looking on, shepherds, lowly shepherds coming to witness. This is our king. Come on. Now he's dying just like he was born. And he lived like he died, and he was born. And he's calling you to a life like that. Who wants in? Another concept that spills out of the passage, out of the chapter 27, is the concept of the relationships of Jesus. It's really interesting because those relationships begin to be our relationships. And as you begin to weed through the events and the testimonies again of people here, you begin to see these kind of relationships appearing. I want to suggest 3 to you, and I'm determined to get through these 3. One is the relationship of his relationship to Israel, his family, how they valued him. Listen close again. His relationship to Israel, his family, how they valued him. You actually go to verse 9. Now, the context of verse 9 we've already discussed in another time, but they're bringing Jesus down the stairs. It's just the crack of dawn. They're taking him over to Pilate's palace because they have to get verification. They have to get approval, and they want him crucified. They want him dead. They got to get approval to kill him. So they're bringing him down the stairway. His face is mutilated. His eyes are swollen shut. His beard is dangling by its roots. He's stumbling as he comes down. They're probably holding him up. They've had a mock trial. They went wild. It went into a demonic frenzy. They worked him over. Judas is lurking in the shadows, couldn't sleep that night. He has gotten the 30 pieces of silver. He's got them in his hand. Can you see them? And he's lurking in the shadows. And as he's hanging around in the shadows, he hears this noise and notices that Jesus is being led down the stairway. He looks at this Jesus, and something deep inside of him begins to stir. He feels this overwhelming remorse. And suddenly this sickening sensation, I have done the wrong thing. He comes running up to the leaders of Israel, the guys he's been dealing with, and says, hey, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. I want to undo this. Here's the 30 pieces of silver. And he gives them back. They refuse to take them, so they are thrown. And can you see 30 pieces of silver all over the floor? And the leadership of Israel says, hey, what is this to us? We don't care about you. We used you. Come on. We got what we wanted out of you. It's your money. Hey, if you want to throw it around, it's your business. What have we to do with you? And Judas slinks off and hangs himself. Can you see these leaders of Israel, long flowing robes? They're squatting down. They're scrambling all over the floor to pick up the 30 pieces of silver. The scripture says when they got the 30 pieces of silver, they said, oh, what are we going to do with the 30 pieces of silver? Oh, give them to the preacher. Put them in the offering. No, we can't do that. Well, wait a minute, they came out of the offering. Well, yeah, but we can't put them back in the offering. No, these actual coins that you've got in your hands, that one right there, it's got a nick on it. I remember we took it right out of the offering and we gave it to Judas. Now we got them back, let's put it back. You can't do that. Why? Well, they are now blood money, the price of blood. And we can't take blood money and put it in the offering. Now, wait a minute. You can take money out of the offering and make it blood money, but when it becomes blood money, you can't put it back. That's right. Do you see the hypocrisy in that? But that's legalism for you. It's always hypocritical. Well, what are we going to do with it? So in the days following, they searched and found this field. Field probably is misleading. Plot of ground, probably too small to build anything on it. The potters came and dug clay out of it to use to make their pottery. And now the field is depleted of the pottery clay, and it's useless. So it's really cheap. By the way, the scholars tell us that 30 pieces of silver was worth maybe $20 in our economy. So they bought that field for the purpose of burying strangers. Because pilgrimage, people were coming from all over the world just to come to Jerusalem on a spiritual pilgrimage. Oh, you had the big one. What are you going to do with them? Bury them there. Then he gives this prophecy. Look at this, verse 9. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they, the children of Israel, priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. It says in the passage, then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, and he was involved. But when you get into research and get into the actual prophecy itself, begin to discover it wasn't so much Jeremiah as it was Zechariah the prophet. And Zechariah is not mentioned, I got that, but because Jeremiah is the major prophet, Zechariah would be the minor prophet, thus he's not mentioned. But it was really Zechariah. See, Zechariah was a prophet of God, but he wasn't always a prophet of God. He started out being a shepherd, and he was a poor shepherd. Oh, it was awful. His sheep, they wandered off. He couldn't get them back. His flock diminished, just slowly diminished. He was losing his shirt. Disease came, killed half of them. When he sheared his sheep, he couldn't sell the wool because it was just, bugs and all kinds. It was just, finally, he bailed out and just lost his shirt and got out of the shepherding business. He's no longer a shepherd. Now, what are you going to do with your life now that you're not a shepherd? He decided, I'll be a prophet. See, you can always preach if you fail at everything else. So now he's a prophet. And he was a poor prophet. The congregation didn't listen to him much, because who would want to listen to him? His sermons were poor, they were long, but aren't they all? And so, he just, it just didn't click. And his prophecy, where it didn't come true, at least from their view. It came the day, it's Pastor's Appreciation Day. So we're going to appreciate the prophet, because it's in the calendar. We don't appreciate him, but we got to. It's in the calendar. And since we never appreciate the prophet, we have to put it in the calendar, or we won't. There's a little sarcasm in all of this, isn't there? So they decided, what are we going to give Zechariah? And they gave him 30 pieces of silver, $20. Want to know how valuable your ministry is to us? Here's a 20. Want to know how important your sermons are to our life? Hey, give you a 20. Want to know how wonderful your counsel is to our life? Hey, we'll slip you a 20. And they valued his ministry with 30 pieces of silver. The Lord told him, go down by the temple. There's the potter's shop. Take the 30 pieces of silver and throw it on the floor in the potter. And there's a whole study on that. You can do that on your own. The point of the prophecy here, the concept is about the value. You see, look at the words. Then they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced. The word priced is the idea of esteem. The word price is the idea of value, of worth. So the whole passage is all about this idea of value. Now that's the prophecy. Zechariah was a type of the Christ. So as Zechariah, a prophet, you're not valuable, $20 will take care of you. Now we've got Jesus, his whole ministry, everything he's about, and how valuable is he to Israel, his family, his people. Jesus, you know what we think of your preaching? $20, man. You know what we think of all the miracles, thousands of them you've done? You know how important they've been to us in Israel? Here's a 20. Here's a 20. You know what we really think about the Sermon on the Mount? Hey, I'll slip you a 20. You know how valuable you are to us, Jesus? We can buy and sell you for a $20 bill. That's your value. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, the question tonight is, how valuable is he to you? Be careful. Oh, preacher, he's really valuable to me, is he? What would you sell him for? Prayer is an interesting thing. Jesus, you're the most important thing in my life. I start my day in prayer, man. Yes, sir, prayer. A half hour. I give you a half hour every single morning. Do you know how sick that is? You give Jesus a half hour a day. You have 24 hours in your day, and you give him 1/2 of 1/24th, and then have the nerve to tell me he's the most valuable thing in your life? Oh, you're right, preacher. But hey, it isn't just a half hour. I pray before my meals now. I pray before my meals, and before I go to bed, I make a 5-minute prayer too. And so stretch that to at least an hour. Okay, so an hour. You give Jesus an hour of your life. You concentrate on him, focus on him, an hour of your day, and that's 1/24th of your day. What do you do with the other 23? Oh, you're right, preacher. I'll crank it up, man. I'll really get with the program. I'll give him 2 hours a day. What? You know how sick that is to give him 2 hours out of your 24? That would be 1/12 of your day. And you want to look me in the eye without even cracking a smile, without even making it a joke, and look me in the eye and say, Jesus is the most important thing in my life. And I say, I don't believe you. Well, preacher, I'll give him 4 hours a day. Do you know how sick that is? That's 1/6 of your day. 5/6 of your day you're spending on yourself, and you're going to tell me you love... Well, preacher, what do you want me to do? Just stay home and read the Bible and pray all day? No, please work. I don't want to, so you work. Good night. Don't... See, that's what we've been trying to, that's the whole issue of the school. That's the whole training, teaching. That's the whole thing we've been trying to say all week. Don't you get it? It's giving him all your time. How can I give him all the time? How could you not give him all your time? If he himself comes to indwell you and he becomes the resource of your very living and the very essence by which you do what you do and the very attitude expressed down at your job and the very flow of your life, if he is the most, can you see it? That he is the most valuable thing and he's life itself and your whole life, everything. It isn't about quitting everything. It's about him involved in the middle of everything until he is the source by which everything takes place, which means he is the most valuable, intimately involved in influence of my entire life, and nothing flows without him. See, don't say to me, I'm sorry, preacher, I just don't have time. What you said is not you don't have time. You have as much time as everybody else does. What you said is, I've used all my time for something else, and this doesn't have value to me as much as this does. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we do what we want to do, and we go where we want to go, and isn't it interesting? We have money for what we want money for. I've learned a lot in living. Homeless guy will come up to me and say, Manley, I really need some food, and could you give me a $5? I don't have any money. But the interesting thing about the homeless man is, while he has no job and he has no money, he always has cigarettes. How do you figure that? We have money for what we want money for. How valuable is he to you? His relationship to Israel, his family, how they valued him. Let me give you another one. His relationship to God, his Father, how he trusted him. This takes you down into verse 43, which is the very essence of the crucifixion. He's hanging on a cross by this time. And the setting, of course, is there are three groups. The three groups are standing around the cross, and they're ushering forth with all of these statements. The first group is given to you in verse 39. Those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads. The last group is down in verse 44. Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. So the robbers wouldn't use the same language that the bypassers would, and yet the essence of what they were saying was the same. There's a third group, which is right in the middle of that, which is the chief priest. This is verse 41. The chief priest mocking with the scribes and the elders said, "He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he is king of Israel, let him now come down from the cross and we will believe him." Here it is. He trusted in God. What was his relationship with his Father? He trusted in God. Let him deliver him now if he will have him, for he said, "I am the Son of God." The mockery was all revolving around the fact that here is a man who absolutely trusted in God. Here is an individual who absolutely depended upon his Father. Every time Jesus turned around, he was talking about his Father. Don't do anything that my Father doesn't do. Only do what my Father does. He just was always all wrapped up in the Father, trusting his Father. Look at him now. Jesus had a new and interesting approach to life. What was the old approach to life? Oh, it's all over the Old Testament. You and I are full of it. See, the old approach to life can be illustrated, I guess, by Gideon. Oh, Gideon, the Midianites are after him, and they've taken all the food, all their cattle, all the Israelites' cattle. They've come and got their milk cows. They went through their gardens and picked all their green beans, and they're just stripped. They have no food because the Midianites have just taken everything, spoiled everything. Here's Gideon. Can you see him? He's in a wine press, which would be low. And he's gathered together this little bit of grain that the Midianites didn't get. And he's hiding down in this wine press with this little bit of grain. And you know what he's trying to do? Well, it's I think it's called winnowing, but he's throwing it up and trying to get the chaff out of the grain. And you don't do that in a low place. You do that in a high place where the wind's blowing. Throw it up and whoa. And he's down here. And while he's down in this wine press hiding, because if the Midianites see him, the grain will be gone. So he's down in the wine press and he's hiding, and he's trying to get this chaff out of this grain so they can make the bread. And as he's down in there, an angel of the Lord shows up. And you know what the angel of the Lord says? "Gideon, the Lord is with you." And Gideon looks at him and says, "No, he's not." Why would he say that? Gideon said, "I got sense enough to know When the Lord is with you, you don't hide in wine presses. See, when the Lord is with you, you don't starve half to death. When the Lord is with you, you go into battle. When the Lord is with you, you're victorious. When the Lord is with you, the enemies run. When the Lord is with you, you have victory. When the Lord is with you, hey, don't tell me. Don't come and tell the Lord's with you. Get it? No, he's not. That's an interesting philosophy, isn't it? But then that's our philosophy, isn't it? I come to your house. And I say, oh, this is beautiful. Look at those curtains. Wow. Those draperies. Wow. Oh, I love this. Oh, your furniture. Oh, this kitchen. Wow. This is great. And you lean back and say, well, God has blessed us. Oh, really? How do I know God has blessed you? Well, because when God's blessed you, you got a big house. When God blesses you, you have. When God blesses you, you got. When God blesses you, you have. See, that's the philosophy. So obviously, Jesus, you're not being blessed. Because you trusted in the Father. And look where you are. Are you ready to open your life to this? An abandonment to God that is so complete that it doesn't matter whether things work out or not. Abandonment to God that is so absolutely secure that you step out into his will, and if everything falls apart, it's immaterial. And an abandonment to God that means suffering, and you embrace it with great joy. An abandonment to God that costs you everything you've got. And you're glad about it. An abandonment to God that takes you to a, and it's okay. And you trust him anyway. It's the Job thing. Though he slay me, yet I'm trusting him. Open to that kind of relationship? See, his relationship in the passage, his relationship to Israel, his family, how did they value him? $20 will buy and sell you. How valuable is he to you? His relationship to God, his Father, how he trusted him. Would you trust him when it doesn't look good? Let me give you another one. His relationship to you, his friend, how he loves you. Go to verse 46. Verse 46 is really an interesting word, but is an interesting passage, because by the time you come to verse 46, you are dead set in the, it's about over. And in verse 46, you have this verse that you know well. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? Do you hear the pain in that thing? Can you feel the heart of Jesus just Now, I don't want to get into a theological argument with you, so hey, just take your theology and talk about it later. All I want to do is deal with the passage here and the words and what is being said. It's interesting, the context. If you want the context of it, verse 45, from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me? So there is a linkage between the darkness and the forsakening. This week we've heard about heavens open, and it's interesting. The heavens have spoken lots of times in the Gospels. At the birth of Christ, the heavens come, brother. Woo! Angels fill the sky. I mean, wow. There's something going on here, and the heavens are testifying and giving announcement to it in his birth. Beautiful. At the baptism, which we've heard about, wow, the heavens are ripped apart, and there's a revelation that takes place. And in the opening of the heavens, there's the Father who is expressing himself, and the heavens are giving expression to the heart of God in the baptism occasion. In the Mount of Transfiguration, when the disciples are so just confused about it all, the heavens are split wide open, and the Father comes, and the heavens give announcement again. This is my beloved Son. Shut up and listen to him. He's well-pleasing, and you've got this whole heaven is speaking. So the heavens are used to speaking over Jesus. Come on, that's no new deal. But they've not been speaking in this occasion. The heavens have been silent. Nothing is being said here until now. The heavens are going to open up. The heavenlies are going to speak. Will they say what they've always said? No. Darkness was over all the land. What does that depict? What's the content of that? What does that mean? Oh, listen to the words of Jesus, who in great agonizing pain screams out, my God, you went off and left me. Now again, I'm not interested in theological argument. I'm not interested, well, Jesus just thought he had. He really didn't. But Jesus was so and it seemed that way to him. I'm not interested in any of those arguments. I'm only interested in what the text has to say. And the text says that Jesus is crying out in pain. My God, you walked off and left me. You have forsaken me. Do you hear the pain? Now, obviously, this does not mean the Father doesn't love the Son anymore. Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, this doesn't mean, well, Jesus is now rebellious against the Father, and obviously the Son is not rebellious against the Father, and he's being punished. What does this mean? You have just been brought into the scene. This isn't about him at all. This is about you. He has sucked into himself all the filth and the raw sewage of your sin and your self-centeredness and your pettiness and your awfulness. He has literally sucked it into himself and taken it into himself and embraced it so sufficiently that it's become like it's his. And the Father and it's all about redemption. Hey, Jesus, you're a good talker. You're eloquent. You astound the crowds. You talk a good talk. And you're always talking about this cross-style stuff, Jesus. And hey, all sounds good, be redemptive. Hey, wash feet, yeah. Feed 5,000 people and don't take up an offering, yeah. It's really good. It's really good. But let me ask you, Jesus, how far are you going to go with that thing? I know, turn the other cheek. Hit me here. Oh, hit me here now. How many times do you... I know, go the second mile. Yeah. Have to carry your packages 1 mile by law. Okay, I'm such a nice guy. I'll take him a second mile. I'll even go the third. I'll go the fourth. But Jesus, when do I drop their stinking packages and say, carry them yourself? How far do you go? How about you, Jesus? How far are you going to go with this cross-style stuff? This bleed, suffer, and die, this never think about yourself. Let's talk about money, Jesus. Would you surrender all of your finances to win your world? Rich young ruler came. Bottom line, go and sell all you got. Come on. Has he done that? Yeah. What about fame and popularity? The crowds are after you, clamoring for your presence, wanting your touch. You're just the hottest item in all of Israel at this stage. Would you give all that up? They're screaming for his blood. Yeah, you pulled that one off, didn't you? You gave that up, didn't you? No question about that. Jesus, let me ask you, how far are you going to go with this thing? Would you give up physical comfort? Would you surrender to redeem a world? Would you give up physical comfort? He passed that one, didn't he? Well, you've given up everything. No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. Well, he's given up money. He's given up popularity. He's given up position. He's given up being comfortable. He's given up. What else is there left? Oh, there's one thing. You can't live without it. There's one thing he's never been without. There's one thing he has never, ever, from eternity to eternity, ever been without. There's one thing. It's the heart of his soul. There's one thing. It's intimacy with the Father. He lives on that. He eats and breathes that. It's the very heart of his being. He can't survive without that. Take everything, money, anything, but I cannot give that up. I have to have the Father. I'm intimate with the Father. I cannot. Jesus, would you give that one up to get me in? My God. Here's a thought. How valuable is Jesus to you? $20. How valuable are you to him? How far would you go to have him in your life? Well, see, I don't mind surrender as long as I can logically see benefits of surrender that outweigh the surrender. See, if I surrender, okay, it's good for the family, it's good for my marriage, see, all those are benefits, it's good for the community, and I get to go to heaven too. Okay, that has benefits. Okay, I'll surrender. See, I surrender to the degree that I can logically see the benefits of the surrender. Would you go beyond that? Well, so I see the benefit of surrendering my tithe. Why? Because I get back. Because you can't outgive God. So, hey, would you recklessly abandon, risk, see no results? Just, how valuable is he to you? How valuable are you to him? And could I propose to you, this is so radical. Is this true? Do I dare state this? You ultimately will not be Christian if the way you value him isn't the way he values you. You've got to match it. How valuable is he to you? How valuable are you to him? Oh, Jesus. I've played with this. I've played with this, God. My Christianity has not been what I can give. My Christianity has been what can I get. Even the cross-style concept of pouring my life out and never ever thinking about myself, even that concept has been, well, it just makes me feel good. And I've done because it builds my spiritual ego. Jesus, would you take me to a new level tonight? A new level of passion, a new level of intimacy. Would you take me beyond anything I've ever known up to this time? Would you bring me into an abandonment that has no borders? Would you bring me in to throw my life away? Would you take me out of my griping and out of my complaining? Would you take me out of my begging you to get me out? Would you take me out of oh God, would you, please, Jesus, bring me to a tree, your cross. And I don't know how you're going to do it, but please, would you let my love for you match your love for me? Would you let how far you'd go for me become how far I'd go for you? And if you would fill me, if you would indwell me, if your nature, if who you are could literally come within me and source me, could that begin to be a reality? How far would I go to win this community? How far would I go to see souls saved? How far would I go to have revival here? How much would I give? How much blood would I shed? How much pain would I endure? And I remember the radical Apostle Paul, so maybe this is not so far off. How you inspired within Paul the very essence of, as he prayed to you and said, God, let me go to hell. Damn me if my people could get in. If my Jewish world could be saved. Forgive me tonight for wimpiness. Forgive me tonight for cowardiceness. Forgive me, oh God, for softness. Forgive me, oh God. Forgive me, oh God, for I've been so babyish. And some of us here tonight, God, how valuable are you to us? You're not even valuable enough for me to experience a little embarrassment and get on my knees at a cross at the altar. I can't even pull that off. What a wimp I am. Heads are bowed. How valuable is he to you? Keep your $20. How valuable are you to him? Would you let him embrace you tonight in a new way? Moments of seeking, moments of seeking. Be obedient.